Hey, I'm Jen Roberts, and I created this Google spreadsheet called Simple Group Creator or Group Creator, and I've made it available to teachers who want to use it. And there's a link right there, goo.gl/OQN3MJ, if you'd like to use that. Keep in mind that goo.gl is case sensitive. But I got a question the other day about how to use the Group Creator if you have fewer than 36 students, because I'm a high school teacher. I typically have 36 students, so I set it up that way. But I'm going to show you how you can break it down, because a few things do break if you have fewer than 36 students. So I'm going to switch over to the roster tab. And on the roster right now, it's not sorted alphabetically, so let's just sort it alphabetically so we can see what we're doing. Albert, Alice, Allison, Amy, Andrew, these are not my students, these are fake students. But as you can see, this goes all the way up to 37 because I have 36 students in this roster. Of course, each student also has a score, whatever score you want to put in, and you can sort them by that score. And then over here, you have homogeneous groups. So Albert, Alice, Allison, Amy, Andrew. So when I sort them alphabetically, their groups become alphabetical, obviously. When I sort them heterogeneously, their groups are still alphabetical, but the A's are going across, the B's are going across, the C's are going across. So I think it's helpful to point out what's happening in the group creator and how it actually works. It's making the groups just by pulling the names from whatever order they're in on the roster page. So when you change the order of kids on the roster page, you change where they are in the groups. So let's go back to the homogeneous groups for a second and I'll show you what I mean. When I click on Albert's name here, the name for Albert here isn't really Albert, it's really roster A2. So whoever's in roster A2 is going to end up being in that space. But when I hit return, it turns into Albert. Alice is roster A3, Allison is roster A4, A5, A6, A7. And group B, the group 2, of course, is Bernard, which is A8, Beth, which is A9, Betty, which is A10. So that's how I get those homogeneous groups. I'm really just taking from the roster A2 through 7 and then A8 through A13 to make each group. That's how they form. Now the heterogeneous groups are formed a little differently because they're A2, but then A8, and then A14, and then A20, and then A26. So it's kind of taking every sixth kid and putting them into that space. So again, the order they are in the roster determines the order of which groups they end up in. Now, this is a problem for people who have less than 36 kids. So let's try to see what that looks like. First, we're going to make a copy of the group creator so that I don't mess up the original one. And now that I have a copy, we're going to take that roster and shorten it. So instead of having 36 kids, I'm going to have, say, 24. Delete. Gone. I have a smaller class now. Isn't that nice? But let's see what happens to our groups now, because remember, now these cells that it used to pull names from are empty. So our homogeneous groups, well, that worked out okay. I just have 2 missing groups. But our heterogeneous groups are going to look a lot stranger. Not so bad, pretty evenly split. Our homogeneous groups of 4 probably still turn out pretty okay. Maybe you wouldn't want to have this many. Where we really get into trouble is not our homogeneous pairs, but our heterogeneous pairs. Because all these kids down here don't have a partner. So we're going to fix that first, and I'm going to show you how. So what we want to do is we want roster A2 through, since we have 24 kids, we're going to need 12 partners. So we really want roster A2 through A12 to stay right where they are. But we want roster A13 and the rest to move out. So first we're going to cut these. Just put them down here for now. And then we want the first 12 kids. So let's say 12, yes. So these we're actually going to chop and move up here. And then this, folks, we can move to. Okay, so I still have an odd number of kids. Now to fix those empty boxes that don't have black lines on them, if you like, you can highlight them, go to grid, choose grid everything, and leave it. Or you can actually just delete those extra spaces because you don't really need them anyway. So let's ungrid those spaces. Slide the screen large, John. Okay, so now I've fixed my heterogeneous groups. Homogeneous groups still work out okay. You could just delete group 5 and 6. But let's imagine I have an even stranger group, like I have, not, it would give me 20 students. The homogeneous groups would start to look a little funny. I'd want to redistribute some of these kids. So all I have to do is figure out who I want down here. So I'm going to move A19 and A18 down. Roster. Sorry, the formula is equals roster exclamation mark A19. And that gives me Connor. And if I want the next one to be A20, well, that would give me Dan, but let's take Colin. A18 equals exclamation mark. That's not equals. It's plus. Equals roster A18. So you can, just by using that roster command, roster exclamation mark, and then whatever cell number you'd like it to be from the roster, you can rearrange which kids are where. And our heterogeneous groups that got a little smaller, those still kind of work. So that's how you can adjust the group creator. You can literally just kind of move cells around, change which roster it's referencing, and it should change who's in which group for you. Have fun.